Kawasaki's Ninja 1000, winner of our 2014 middleweight sport touring shootout, faces a direct challenge in 2016 from Suzuki's all-new GSX-S1000F. These two inline four-powered litter bikes both deliver sporty performance, but in a more street-friendly package than their track-focused superbike siblings. They represent an enticing option for sport bike riders willing to trade top-end horsepower for a broader, more usable power band, as well as ditch cramped track-biased riding positions for more relaxed upright ergonomics. These bikes are versatile too, capable of carving up canyons, tackling commutes and running up the odometer during an extended weekend away from home. And it doesn't hurt that they're several $1,000s less expensive than their superbike analogs either. Practical and affordable, we've been eager to compare the Ninja 1000 and GSX-S1000F side by side, where their similarities and differences were revealed out on the open road. Engine and power delivery. The heart of the Kawasaki is a 1043cc inline-4 with 77mm bore and 56mm stroke, the same mill used in the Z1000 Street Fighter. Power output is managed by two engine modes, full and low, with the Ninja utilizing a 3-mode Kawasaki traction control system. TC can also be turned off if the rider so desires. The engine is immediately responsive at the turn of the throttle, with impeccable fueling. The Ninja rewards riders with a linear and predictable power delivery from the early revs up to about 7,000 RPM. Even in full power mode, the delivery in the lower revs is nicely manageable, no arm yanking or front end popping unless you're asking for it. At around 7,000 RPM there's a jump in power which grows steadily until reaching its peak at 122.5 ponies at its 10,500 redline, though there's comparable power available from 9,700 RPM, 122.2 horsepower onward. Peak torque registered at 74.3 pounds-foot at 7,500 RPM during its run on the Motauza dyno. The GSX-S1000F's engine borrows a 2005 to 2008 version of the GSX-R1000 inline-4, with some tweaks to the camshaft profiles to improve street performance, primarily in the low to mid-range. It's a 999cc inline-4 with 3.6mm smaller bore, 73.4mm, and 3mm longer stroke, 59mm, compared to the Kawi. There are no engine modes on the GSX-S1000F, but Suzuki has included its traction control system, which offers 3 levels of sensitivity and an offsetting. The mill is potent and responsive, but had a tendency to lunge on initial throttle application, whether from a stop or during roll-on in a corner. A more delicate throttle modulation alleviated the problem, but it lacked the buttery smooth engagement of the Kawasaki. Where the Suzuki shined was after acceleration had been initiated, with a sport bike-inspired power band that gives and gives. Peak torque output on the Suzuki is nearly identical to the Kawasaki, with 75 pounds-foot available a little later in the rev range at 9,000 RPM. But horsepower is superior, with 141.8 horses available at 10,000 RPM. The Kawasaki and Suzuki are almost identical in power output up to 8,500 RPM, but after that the Suzuki keeps on going while the Kawi levels off. Riding the two bikes side by side, the Suzuki came off as the livelier mount, with more power and smoother delivery after the initial opening of the throttle. The Kawasaki's bottom felt mellower against the Suzuki, even in full power mode, and while throttle application on the Ninja was more refined, the character of the GSX-S1000F engine was more appealing to our testers, especially in longer sweeping corners and on the freeway. Tighter turns were initially more troublesome, due to the throttle jump, but a more precise turn of the right hand mitigated even this issue. Unfortunately, the Suzuki has a jumpy initial throttle which made it more difficult to deal with in the tight corners than the Kawasaki, explained test rider Jason Abbott. Get past that initial throttle and you're greeted with a strong linear power that pulls noticeably harder and longer than the Kawasaki. The Kawasaki is geared taller than the Suzuki, but vibration on the Kawasaki is much more prevalent above 6,000 rpm. Coasting on the freeway above 7,000 rpm in the 75-80 miles per hour range left our testers with the lingering tinkle of engine vibes in their feet, legs and hands. Even with the Suzuki running about 500 rpm higher at freeway speeds, engine vibration was nowhere near as acute. Mellow power delivery and plush suspension give the Kawasaki a great feel when cruising around town, added Abbott. Unfortunately, when the RPMs reach over 6,000, the engine puts out some noticeable vibes through the chassis. Transmission. The transmissions on both bikes are dialed in, with precise, smooth shifts when rowing up and down the gearbox. Kawasaki's primary upgrade to the 2016 Ninja 1000 was to add new assist and slipper cams to the clutch, to give the bike a lighter pull at the lever and help stabilize the rear wheel during heavy downshifting. Engagement at the lever of the Ninja is progressive, and pull is light, but not quite as easy as on the GSX-S1000F. A blip of the throttle is still helpful to ensure that downshifts are seamless, as it is on the Suzuki. Between the two bikes, it's basically a draw in terms of transmission performance, though, as mentioned previously, the Kawasaki is geared taller and cruises at highway speeds lower in the rev range. Handling and suspension. The Suzuki felt lighter at the bars, turned in quicker and had a more nimble, sport bike feel compared to the Kawasaki. The GSX-S1000F felt stiffer in the suspension department, but the 43mm Kybe fork offers three-way adjustment and single Kybe shock is adjustable for preload and rebound. The Kawasaki was plush and even somewhat soft out front, but its 41mm fork and horizontally mounted shock are similarly adjustable. However, the setup out back has the added benefit of a remote preload adjustment dial, which will be especially useful for riders looking to quickly account for luggage or a passenger. The Ninja required much firmer input at the bars to settle into turns, and the 511-pound machine curb weight wears its heft noticeably in comparison to the 474-pound GSX-S1000F. That being said, both bikes tracked a line through the corner well and responded immediately to adjustments when leaned over. Both remained composed in the twisties and provided a comfortable, non-jarring ride on the portions of the Louisiana freeway we traveled, with its many imperfections. However, the Suzuki inspired more confidence to push harder through the turns, another example of its sport bike bent. Braking. Suzuki takes the cake in terms of braking performance, with its Brembo monoblocks at front providing superior feel and response at the lever. The initial bite isn't especially strong, but once engaged the binders offer more modulation feel as they grip the dual 310mm rotors. Its rear brake is soft on initial application but performs up to the task when needed. The Brembo front brakes on the GSX-S1000F are definitely one of its standout features, especially when you need to stop in a hurry, said Abbott. The Kawasaki's 4-piston calipers grip dual 300mm discs and perform well, but don't offer the level of response and feel as the kit on the Suzuki. Out back, the rear brake responds more quickly than the Suzuki and offers comparable feel once engaged. The Kawasaki's ABS system kicks on more quickly and noticeably than the Suzuki's as well.